He is absent and excused.
Mr. Hanson?
Here.
Mr. Hanem?
Here.
Mr. McCann?
Here.
Mr. Richardson?
Here.
Ms. Stout?
Here.
Mrs. Westfall?
Here.
There are 6 members of City Council present, therefore a quorum does exist. I welcome our guests to the meeting tonight. Are you a student in the back?
Yes.
Great. What school are you from? Terrific. Nice to see you here.
That would be the ending.
I invite all of you to join us in our Pledge of Allegiance, this meeting led by Mrs. Westfall.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did you find the agendas on the side table? Good. We're up to agenda item 3, which is additions to the agenda. I would like to add as 3A, election of a council president pro tem for tonight's meeting.
I'd like to move.
And also at your places tonight is a replacement ordinance 57, 2023 to substitute for the one in your packet. Are there other additions to the agenda? Hearing none. Mr. Sanford?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Captain Eubaker?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Aller?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Schroyer?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Or Ms. Brining?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
With that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and the agenda is approved for this evening. So on to added agenda item 3A, election of President Pro Tem
Mr. Mayor?
in Council President Fry's absence.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hanem.
I'd like to move that we make Mary Westfall our president pro tem. Second.
It's moved and seconded to designate Mrs. Westfall as our Council President Pro Tem for this evening. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and congratulations, Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mayor.
And so we'll be right to you for agenda item 4, approval of the meeting minutes from our meeting on June 5th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move approval of the Sylvania City Council meeting minutes from the meeting held June 5th, 2023 as submitted.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes from June 5th as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and those meeting minutes are approved. On to agenda item 5. This is a update and a final change orders for the work on Altera Drive. Mr. Aller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the project is complete on Altera Drive. It included both water and sewer work as well as street reconstruction. The project was originally approved for $367,185, with the contractor being Helms & Sons Excavating. The project, the final quantities, actually resulted in a decrease to the contract amount of $8,223.11. The primary savings in the project is we have switched to utilizing or accepting, I should say, PVC water main pipe in lieu of ductile iron pipe if the contractor wishes to do so. Ductile iron pipe has delivery issues especially in this construction season, as well as is becoming more and more expensive. So we have switched to allow either ductile iron pipe or PVC pipe, and in this case, PVC pipe offered us a savings. So this reduces the final contract amount to $358,961.89, and we recommend approval of the final change order.
Mr. Aller?
Yes.
Does the ductile iron pipe perform, or I'm sorry, does the PVC pipe, will it perform in a similar fashion to the ductile iron pipe?
Yeah, the life expectancy of the PVC pipe is, as much or more than the ductile iron pipe. It's, other places that I've been, we've utilized polyvinyl, PVC, polyvinyl chloride pipe, and have had, very few issues with it. It doesn't have the corrosion factor that ductile iron pipe has, so you benefit from that. The main thing you have to be careful with in utilizing PVC pipe is at fittings, because you're using metal fittings on plastic pipe. So that's the careful point, but contractors are aware of that, inspectors are aware of that, and make sure that we take greater care. So,
Thank you.
yeah, I would expect just as long as life.
Okay.
And certified for potable water use.
Correct.
Yeah, goes without saying, but I asked the same questions, Mr. Hanem.
I have no doubt, Mr. Mayor.
What about if somebody accidentally hits it with a backhoe? It's probably not quite as tough, I would think. But I might be wrong.
Yeah, you can, crack the pipe, PVC, I'm gonna shorten it to PVC. You can crack the PVC with backhoes, but the flip side of that is with ductile, if you do get a weak spot in it, it's gonna be a much longer, PVC is gonna be localized, where ductile iron, if you crack that, it's gonna run up the pipe, and so you end up with a much bigger, repair. So, it's a little bit plus or minus on both sides.
And I believe they're using the PVC pipe on Monroe Street in front of City Hall.
That's correct.
Yeah.
If you see blue pipe, it's water pipe. If you see green pipe, that's sewer pipe.
All right. That gets us up to agenda item 5B. We have ordinance 56, 2023 to approve this deduct change order. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to introduce ordinance number 56, 2023 by title only, authorizing the mayor and director of finance to approve change order number 1 final to this city's agreement with Helms and Sons Excavating, Inc. for the Altera Drive Improvement Project to reflect the final installed quantities, decreasing the contract amount by $8,223.11, and I would move passage as an emergency measure.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 56, 2023 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 56, 2023 is enacted as an emergency measure. Agenda item 6 is an update and hiring of a consultant for the downtown transportation improvement project. Mr. Aller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you're well aware, we did a preliminary study on this project and preliminary design issues. We had a lot of citizen and organization input on this project, and we took that information and utilized it during our scope and fee negotiations with the engineering firm. We did request letters of interest and in April and received just one letter of interest on the project. It was led by DGL Consulting, which was the firm that did the preliminary engineering services. And they've assembled a team of themselves, Edge Group for landscape architecture, JDRM for lighting and electrical, Jones and Henry for water and sanitary sewer, and CT Consultants, who just fairly recently became the firm TTL Associates, that you may be more familiar with for geotech services, just recently became part of CT Consultants. So it's that group. We got the scope clearly defined, and then we started in on fee negotiations with DGL and have come to a preliminary agreement with them as far as the engineering section is concerned, to have the final design of the project in the amount of $603,100. The modified ordinance that you got this evening shows the fund that was originally in there had this expense coming out of the capital improvement account, and we have modified that fund number to show that we are utilizing the ARPA funds that we received from the federal government. So it is coming out of those ARPA funds, and we modified that fund number to indicate that.
Questions for Mr. Aller?
Mr. Aller, in the attachment, the list of the scope of services, I think it looks like the last line item on page 3, it talks about a schedule will hold the October 2024 sale date. Could you just elaborate on, I guess, what that means, how that works into the timeline overall?
Assuming this is approved tonight, we'll sit down with the consultant, we'll start getting milestone dates established. Typically, we'll do 30%, stage 1 plans are called, which are about 30%, stage 2 are about 60%, and then stage 3 are about 90%. And those are kind of milestones along the design process. And then a project like this, I wouldn't anticipate, but there may be some property acquisition and things of that nature. But the ARPA funds do have a requirement that the funds be committed by the end of calendar year 2024. So our intent is to go to go to sale in October of 2024. It's a fairly large project, so it'll probably be a month-long bidding process. And then that still gives us our December meetings in 2024 to actually make an award to a contractor and commit the funds by the end of 2024. Those funds then have to be spent, so the project would have to be complete by December of 2026. I do not anticipate this being a 2-year project. It would be a construction season in 2025 will be the actual construction.
Certainly, we could use the ARPA funds first.
Correct.
Going to be a lot more in it than that.
Yes.
All right. There's no further questions. You do have a replacement ordinance 57, 2023 at your spot this evening. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 57, 2023 by title only, accepting the proposal of DGL Consulting Engineers LLC for professional engineering services for final design engineering relative to the downtown transportation improvement project, appropriating funds therefore in the amount of $603,100, and I move passage as an emergency measure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 57, 2023 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 57, 2023 is enacted as an emergency measure.
Thank you.
On to agenda item 7. This is a proposed donation of expandable batons to the Owens Community College Police Academy. Captain Eubaker.
Thank you, Mayor. About 10 years ago, we switched baton manufacturers from Monadnock to ASP, which is what we're currently using. And a lot of police equipment, there's a training portion of it that you have to use their training, and this was a training issue, so we changed batons. The batons that I want to donate to both Owens Community College and Northwest State Community College are unused. They've been on a shelf for about 10 years, and we don't have any use for them anymore. They could
Okay.
they were tickled to hear that we want to donate them to both, and I happen to be an instructor at both police academies, so I have a relationship, and I know that Northwest State doesn't have any, and Owens is using kind of beat up equipment, so.
All right, well, we're glad they can provide new service at these academies. Maybe you can put a City of Sylvania, come work for us sticker on them.
So I would say it's been a fair estimate that every police academy I teach at, I play our city up and recruit from within the academy, so.
We appreciate that. All right, we do have proposed ordinance 58, 2023 to make this donation. And in Mr. Fry's absence, Mr. McCann, will you read this one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce by title only ordinance number 58-2023, authorizing the donation of 21 monodock autolock 21-inch expandable batons to the Owens Community College Police Academy, authorizing the donation of the 21 monodock autolock 21-inch expandable batons to the Northwest State Community College Police Academy, determining said property to be of no further use to the city of Sylvania. I move for passage of ordinance number 58-2023 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 58, 2023 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 58, 2023 is enacted as an emergency measure. Captain, is Monadnock the right?
Yeah, Monadnock.
Yeah. Seems to me that's a New York town or something.
You know, I think it is an East Coast company, so.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
On to agenda item 8. This is ordered legislation from the last council meeting to amend the procedure for city council's appointments. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce resolution number 6-2023. All members of council having received copies, I'll read by title only. A resolution amending the procedure for Sylvania City Council's appointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Fire EMS Advisory Board, and the Sylvania Area Joint Recreation District Board of Trustees. I move final passage of resolution number 6-2023 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for passage of resolution number 6, 2023 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and resolution 6, 2023 is enacted as an emergency measure. Agenda item 9 is a report back to you from the Plan Commission that met here last Wednesday and reviewed special use permit number 1, 2023 for the Toledo Islamic Academy to add 2 outdoor classroom shelters behind their building. They'd be along the west property line, 30 feet from the property line. Again, this is their recommendation that you approve it, but you need to set a public hearing date for this so the neighbors, particularly the ones to the west, can take a look at them. I believe you had copies of these in your council packets last week. I don't know if they're in there this week or last meeting, but they're quite attractive. There's airy picnic shelter type things. They look good to me. And they were approved by the Board of Architectural Review last week as well. So if there's no further comment, Mr. Hayden, we need to set the public hearing date.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we set a public hearing for August 21, 2023 at 7 p.m. for zoning ordinance amendment SUP number 1-2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Is 7 o'clock a problem?
No, we just wanted to make sure it was in the motion, that's all.
Yeah, put it in motion.
It's not on the agenda, and I think we just need to say it's 7 p.m., so, in these council chambers.
Right, I think I said that.
You might have, I'm not sure.
You did.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to set that date as the public hearing for SUP 1, 2023. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and the clerk is ordered to advertise for that date. I was up to that campus a couple of weeks ago for their DARE graduation. Took a look at the site for these, and it looks fine to me over there. Also, the addition to their building is approaching completion, blends right in, looks really good. It was a big addition to the west side of the existing building along Alexis. Okay, agenda item 10 is an LPGA Dana open request, and we enclosed, I had the clerk enclose the email that Mr. Sanford received and we talked about at staff. Does this have to do with that?
Yes.
Okay,
I requested that we view the video if we could.
this is the, okay, for the ads, the television ads?
Correct.
All right, let me talk a little bit about it
I
before
was
we
gonna
get
say,
to
can
that.
we,
The LPG Open has been going on here in Sylvania for many years. It dates back to Mayor Sini, and the city worked very hard, along with Highland Meadows, to get it here from the golf course that's now Stone Oak. In the early years, I remember city council funded all the, not just the police work out on Erie Street, but also security for the entire tournament. We paid for trash removal and we did other things. But over the years, we've been able to shed most of that expense, even to the point of reducing the number of officers that work on Erie Street, because we had, that's a tough time to order officers in to do overtime like that. So we've gone from providing maybe $25,000 or $30,000 worth of expenses for the tournament. Last year, I believe, was about $14,000 or so. And we do receive income tax on the purse, which last year was about $23,000. So there's a differential that you can think about between the $23,000 we receive in income tax and the maybe this year $15,000 or so of outright personnel expense that will go to the tournament. So maybe there's $7,000 or $8,000 there that the city sees on its books as profit. Now, I'm told that the number for the police officers does not include all their benefits yet. So that number is going to go up a little bit. The differential is a little bit less than that. But I think there is a path to do this if you want to do this as a one-time donation to the tournament. And this email specifically requested it to help fund television ads, which are done for really to benefit the city of Toledo. Well, at first you could say we shouldn't do that, but actually the city of Sylvania benefits when Toledo is doing well. And I know that when I was early in my mayorship, and this used to be listed as in Toledo, Ohio, the golf tournament, we made noise about it out here because I'd read in an out-of-town newspaper. I remember once being in Denver for an architectural exam grading event. It said the LPGA tournament was in Toledo, Ohio, and I objected to it. And ever since, we've got it in the sports pages as in Sylvania, Ohio. And they continue to report it that way, and I think it's appropriate. Toledo's the official host. It even got to the point one year, they used to have those nice dinners downtown in the convention center, and they would, in the past, Judd Silverman would always introduce Mayor Finkbeiner as the host mayor. But the last couple of years, he started introducing Sylvania as the host community. And I stood up. And one time, Cardi was already standing up, waving, and glared over at Judd, just like he did at the awards ceremony one year when he introduced me before him. He didn't like that. That's all in the past now. But it's kind of fun. We have gotten our share of attention from this. I think it's very good for the community and something for your consideration. But Brian, I appreciate you getting the ad. Why don't you introduce that or say what you need to say?
I wanted to ask either you or Mr. Sanford, have you had a conversation with Judge Silverman regarding this?
We sure have.
And could you expand on
I'll
that?
let Bill do that.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. After Judd sent me the email and, well, he actually called me first, then he sent me the email with more of the description. I think how they got to this point, and they have two key sponsors every year, a title sponsor, presenting sponsor. And those roughly bring in about annually $2 million. And that covers the purse and it covers this TV contract, which is relatively new. When they were struggling to get on TV years ago to now, it's part of the deal and to be on the Golf Channel or national TV, so that's a component they have to have. So they were definitely in a spot this year because of only having one of those sponsors. So they were scrambling with how they're going to do this. And I think, in talking earlier to Patrick, why are we hearing about it now? It seems kind of late in the game. I think they've been trying to secure another sponsor and they were not able to do that at this late date. I think they're thinking more of that for next year, and I'll get to that in a minute. But so I think they came up with this idea, well, we've got this time, because those two sponsors would split these 50 commercials that are identified in the letter. And so Dana's gonna be on 28 of those commercials. So they put together this package to have this commercial play 22 times and then get the people that they've raised about a little over $100,000 so far to help offset that cost. If you split that cost of that 654,000, I think that was the number. It's probably about 330 they were trying to get to pay for this sponsorship with this set of the commercials. And so, so they're a little short, being at 105, but they're doing the best they can. Luckily, they're in a situation where they've got some reserves built up, so they're able to do this. But that's a one-time thing, and the goal right now is to line up the sponsor for next year, which they're working on. But they're not going to have a long time. We're going to know in August if there's going to be a tournament next year. We're going to know fairly soon because they've got to get this lined up, and it's got to be a year in advance. And that's why it came at this point, and they were looking to see if we would be interested in helping them this year. That was the request, and that's how we got to this point.
And the other question I had was, I'm sure I don't have the complete list, but was the Chamber of Commerce, Sylvania Area Chamber of Commerce approached? Are you aware?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Just, it's good to know. Well, thank you for the information. Anyone else? Questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have a quick
This
question.
is Westfall.
Did you indicate that we had positive revenue from the
The
tournament?
last few years, the purse has grown, and last year we brought in about $23,000 in income tax. And last year we spent $14,500 in overtime for the police. And we no longer do trash removal or any other security on it. So yes, the general fund has seen income that way. I cannot estimate what our downtown businesses may benefit from the influx of visitors. All I'm talking about is our general fund.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's good to know. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So the other ask that I had was if Mr. Silvernail was able to show the spot that was referred to in the letter. So if you're able to, Chuck?
Come back home, the Ohio.
The city's coming up.
Take me back,
So here's the thing about gems.
take me back.
Some are on full, breathtaking display, impossible to miss. Others take a little digging. But when you find them, the feeling is always the same. Wonder. And when you find Toledo, you may indeed wonder, why don't we come here more often? Toledo, Ohio. More than you ever imagined.
Thank you.
Some of you may recall, it's probably been 7 or 8 years ago, we actually produced our own ad when they first had us trying to do these. And we had a Sylvania Grows ad where it said Sylvania, and there was a plant vine that twisted around, and it was pretty cool.
It was a cool app.
But we do not have the option to do that this year. Time is too short, and there'd be a production cost for the ad itself.
Mr. Hayner and I had a conversation today, and he'd spent a little more time thinking about it than I. But I do think interesting and helpful to know that we did come out ahead finally at one point. And I don't think our goal, from my viewpoint, is to make a bunch of money. It's to support our community, have our community get the positive visibility, our merchants get the additional business, our restaurants get the additional business, and the positive footprint it provides for us, not only in Toledo, but beyond. So, I would be very comfortable making some kind of support for this. I'm not sure what that dollar figure is, but at minimum, whatever we came out ahead of on last year, I would think would be fair.
Mrs. Westfall, based on the numbers I heard, we'd make a very small investment at a $10,000 contribution. And that would be not insignificant.
That's a little more than I'd been thinking about. I was thinking you'd be
I
around
suspected
5,000.
that.
Toledo's only putting in 30,000, and it's all about Toledo, though they did show a few scenes from outside of the city limits. Nothing that I recognized in Sylvania.
They did mention our name.
I did?
I missed that. Did they?
At the end, yeah, in Sylvania, Ohio. Well, that was definitely in.
Maybe play it again.
Play it again,
Yeah,
right at the
I
end.
didn't hear that.
I didn't hear it either.
Bill?
Good.
Mayor, I'm not sure about that either, but I do know that Judd said they stress with them on the broadcast, always say they're coming from Sylvania, Ohio, so it's mentioned during the broadcast, and then the people, if we do decide to support it, our name would be listed as one of the sponsors on the daily pass that they hand out on the, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there's the info telling the tee times, we'd be listed on that.
Okay, well, Chuck, can you play it again?
Did it say it in?
Come back home, the Ohio.
The city's coming up.
Take me back,
So here's the thing about gems.
take me
Some are on full, breathtaking display, impossible to miss. Others take a little digging. But when you find them, the feeling is always the same. Wonder. And when you find Toledo, you may indeed wonder, why don't we come here more often? Toledo, Ohio. More than you ever imagined.
No, it was Toledo, Ohio, I thought it was Sylvania. I misheard it.
Donating $10,000 would put us in a deficit position that's more than our book profit on it. And I don't have the exact numbers because we don't have benefits on those police things. We might even be in a deficit if we go 5,000, but 5,000 would match the contribution by the Toledo Chamber and by RGP and by Connect Toledo. That seems appropriate to me, though you can be as generous as you want. I just don't want to explain why we would be spending taxpayer dollars so that the Dana LPGA can boast about giving more money to charity. That would bother me a little bit.
Is there any, is how much they raise have anything to do with whether or not this tournament's gonna come back next year, or will that have no bearing on that?
Well, first off, I'd like this to be a one-time donation.
Sure, of course.
I think what Mr. Sanford described is more important. They need to find another major sponsor. These piecemeal sponsorships aren't gonna cut it.
Is this a
The
Band-Aid?
purse is
Yeah.
1.4 million or something like that. That's a lot of money. And it's not, they don't make much at the gate. It's about donations.
Mr. Mayor, the unstated goal of the LPGA for having this tournament in this town is to get us to the U.S. Open ladies in 2027.
I've heard that,
I
yes.
feel that our contribution of $10,000, if council would approve that amount, would help us get through this year and alleviate any questions of this year, helping to provide instigation for next year's sponsor. Showing our support for that, I think, would go a long way. And that would be 2024. And in 2027, we would probably not host the tournament because having two events during the same calendar year is difficult to do. And so we would anticipate that. So this would be a 3-year contract potentially starting next year. I think it would be ideal for us to show our support.
A contract for the LPGA with Highland Meadows Golf Club.
Correct.
Not for the city to
Not for the
provide this
city,
for 3
no.
years.
Again, talking about unstated goals.
Well, I can't fault city council for being generous and forward-looking like that. I've told you my concern with that number, but that's why we bring it here.
Mr. Mayor, you said the 14,000 last year does not include benefits, is that correct?
14,500, I think it was last year, something like that. We're anticipating, Chief Miller is anticipating around 15,000 or so this year. And if you put a markup of a third on there for benefits, it's gonna take it up closer to $20,000.
And how much local tax revenue do we derive from that? We've never been able to ascertain a number.
That's very hard to come up with.
Yes, but the benefit of advertising and our name out there to have actually a national event such as this, I think goes a long way.
In the past, when the network, when the Golf Channel comes to town, and then they show it on CBS, they usually were taking pictures of Sylvania to show where the tournament was. They don't show Toledo. They were showing our downtown and saying, this is in Sylvania, Ohio. So there could be some benefit that way as well. And again, I'm very serious when I say, as Toledo is successful, Sylvania benefits. There's just no doubt about that. So I'm glad to see Toledo out in front and coming up with $30,000. We can approach the chamber, but Bill, you're on their board. I bet you they don't have $5,000 in their PR fund.
I know it would be something of a discussion like we're having here tonight, but
Yep.
It'd be something they could consider, but it'd be a kind of a timing thing right now.
Even the Toledo chamber only put in 5,000.
But I can, get back with the board and find out, because we still have time before the tournament.
Mr. Stanford, you mentioned the focus on next year with securing a presenting sponsor. Is there a risk of the tournament not occurring if they're not able to
I would say
identify a
yes.
sponsor?
It's a very real possibility, but they're optimistic, and they definitely want to have the tournament, but I think how Brian explained it is pretty accurate as what their situation is, and they want to continue to have it. It's just that they've hit on this not the best situation as far as the presenting sponsors had turned out here.
Right. Yeah, just my thought is, whether it's 5,000 or 10,000, I think that helps this year. I don't know how much it helps the future, So I guess that's how I look at it.
How about if we look at a middle-of-the-road compromise of 7,500? Might as well go to 10.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, $2,500 one way or the other isn't,
Doesn't matter, I agree.
I can justify that when I get questions, $23,000 of income, $15,000 of police expense, just the overtime hourly stuff. Those numbers work. I can handle that.
So
Not that I'm gonna get that question.
Right, and it's a business.
Sharon, you already heard it.
Yeah, and it's a local business promotion issue as well, so.
And they do donate to our local charities as well. We lobby them every year to include a Sylvania charity, and they have one this year. Bill or Sharon, do you remember who that was? But I did see it.
Heritage Sylvania was
You did? No.
one of the volunteers.
There There was a Sylvania charity involved. I'm
There
sorry.
usually is,
Yep.
I usually encourage local youth serving agencies to apply. And I know some of our agencies have been able to receive grants, whether the drug prevention, I think they've gotten it in the past.
Yes.
I think Sylvania Area Family Services have gotten
They
it.
definitely have, yep.
I move that we make a commitment of $7,500
A one-year commitment.
for 1 year to the Dana Open LPGA Golf Tournament in Sylvania, Ohio.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'd like to add that it is Heritage Sylvania was selected as a Dana Open charity for this year.
Oh, great.
That's
great.
really good. That's a positive to help explain it right there. All right, if there's no further discussion, there's a motion to donate $7,500 this year. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will be back to you with the appropriate legislation at our next meeting, but in the meantime, we will make that commitment with the tournament so that we can proceed and they are aware of the funding. Brian, I appreciate your extra investigation to see the ad.
You're welcome. Do we, how does this mechanically happen procedurally?
I will have an ordinance at the next council meeting for you to approving it.
We
And
just
if
can't
there's-
write the check to them until
Yeah.
you approve it,
Yeah.
that's
That's
all.
why I'm
Yeah.
asking the
Yep,
question.
so it'll
But
just
we
be
can
an
make the
appropriate-
commitment to Judd in the tournament that'll be coming.
Okay.
Yep.
You
Thank you.
okay with that, Mr. Schroyer? Yes. Okay, good discussion and a good resolution.
So our next meeting is July 5th, right?
Nope,
No.
it's July 17th.
17th, yeah.
Oh. Okay. We just have one meeting in July and August, I forgot. Silly boy. Sorry. And that's sufficiently timely for,
As long as they know it's coming, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, it takes them months to actually
Is everyone-
receive everything and make any allocations,
okay.
And you've heard the term, the check's in the mail.
truly.
All right,
Well, we did have a unanimous vote, you can tell them that.
yeah, we can. Okay, are there any committee reports to be made at this time? Or committee referrals? I would like to talk for a moment about the farmer's market at Olander Park this afternoon. It seemed to me to be a great success. There were more vendors and more patrons and a really nice venue over at Olander Park. They had people parking at Tam O'Shanter, walking across Vicksburg, going in 2 gates into the west side of Olander, using those 2 parking lots that go back towards the rental shelters along the driveway over there. It was just a wonderful atmosphere. Much bigger and more successful than I think I've ever seen it at its previous venues. So
Great.
kudos to Olander Park, Outdoor Sylvania, and to John there. I can't think of John's last name, but their John Page, their programming director over there. He was out there shaking hands and thanking people for coming, and I went with my wife Barbara, and she bought 3 things, and other people were carrying stuff around as well, so I think it was successful. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The only information items are the meeting minutes from the Board of Architectural Review and the Planning Commission held last Wednesday. And with that,
Mr. Mayor, I see an item on the building review, item number 7 of the meeting for Inside the 5. Could you explain what the status there is and what the request was?
Well, they were into the Board of Architectural Review for the board to approve the appearance of their building. And I did not bring those drawings with me, but it's similar to what you've seen in the past.
For the expansion.
For the expansion project, they actually showed a few changes being made on the south facade of the existing building as well. They showed their proposed signage, but the signage was not part of the application. They knew they'd be back at another time. Looks like a great addition to our downtown.
Timing?
Chris was here representing the company, and he said they're prepared to get under construction as soon as they have their permits and approvals.
Isn't the contract deadline is coming up quickly, right?
We've passed it, and we've
I thought it was
extended
end of
it.
June,
Yeah. it
We
is that much.
extended it to June.
which
Yeah.
isn't like next week.
Yeah.
But
So-
they're working on it, you know what it's not like we haven't just, we haven't not heard from them.
Yes.
So I think that their approvals, the approval process, they've been very cooperative, and Kevin can address this more, but I think there's been some, with the downtown transportation improvements, some design issues that we've worked through, that Kevin has worked through with them to try to resolve, and there was a grade issue, so.
There's a great issue in
It's
front of
been
the
a little
place.
more
If you
complicated.
think about where those duplexes were, they sat up several steps above the sidewalk, and there were steps that went down from the north at their north entrance. They were struggling with making that handicapped accessible, and we were struggling with having enough space left between their building patio and the sidewalk and the street improvements, and we all came to a resolution that we think works.
So that took a little bit of time.
So are they going to break ground per the contract on time?
That I
Or what?
don't.
Doesn't sound like it to
That-
me.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure where they are. I can reach out to their attorney and get an updated timeline.
So are we gonna need, if there's a contract breach, are we gonna need to do anything here, or how does that?
The
evolve?
remedy would be for us to repurchase the property. That's the remedy in the agreement. And that I would recommend, if we want to discuss that, I would recommend we do that in executive session once there's been an
No,
actual
we're not gonna do
breach.
that.
Why
We're
don't
not there
we,
yet.
why don't we get back to you with a report at our July 17th meeting? And if necessary, we'll have an extension of that breaking ground date at that meeting then.
Look, I want to be clear that inside the five, that this is a good development for downtown.
Oh, it certainly
And
is.
we're
I am not, we are
100%,
not here to shut
100%
them
in
down.
support.
Oh, no.
And whatever
And
we
they're-
need to do,
They're showing a good faith
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah,
we're
they're-
gonna do.
Right, and a
They've
lot of
invested a lot of
this
money in their
was
design
on
drawings,
us.
which we've gone through 3 or 4 reviews
Right.
on them.
Right,
And it is not reduced in scale to what their original rendering was a couple of years ago. They're still showing a second level deck for eating, a covered deck down below. It looks really good.
It's encouraging to see progress at any
Yes.
stage.
Mr. Sanford?
Mr. Mayor, just to add that, in any conversation I had, I mean, their goal was to break ground this month. So, you know, we've got a couple weeks here.
We can issue as far as I know, the site plan review's all done. We can issue a zoning permit, which means they can get a building permit.
Turn the shovel. They met their date.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Glenn,
Thank you. All right. There's no further business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and this council stands adjourned till our next regularly scheduled meeting on Monday, July 17th at 7:30 PM in these council chambers. Thank you all for attending.